Let us start the day. Welcome. It is my real pleasure to welcome you to the second day of the webinar called Ecosystem Services, Practical Applications for Civil Servants in the Western Balkans region, which is organized by the Montenegrin NGO called Center for Climate Change, Natural Resources and Energy at the University of Donja Gorica, here in the capital city of Podgorica, with the support from German Organization for International Cooperation, GIZ. My name is Anđela Đurašković, and I'm an environmental educator and entrepreneur here from Montenegro, and it is my pleasure to be your host yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So, first of all, on behalf of all the organizers, let me thank you once again. We are really blown away by all the support from all of you. And for all of you that are joining us today for the first time, here is some information. So this webinar is being organized as part of the project development of an educational program for civil servants on ecosystem services, their assessment, valuation, and integration into development planning, with the support from GIZ. We structured this 3-day program like a funnel, guiding you from the broadest theoretical concepts needed for understanding the topic of ecosystem services to the concrete actions you can take and the resources you can consult to integrate the ecosystem services assessment and valuation into your own work, especially in all activities related to creating policy and the decision-making process. Yesterday, our lecturers, Marija Vuktelić and Sanja Pokrajac, set a wonderful foundation for all the discussion that is going to happen today and tomorrow. PhD Marija Vuktelić from the University of Donja Gorica gave a lecture on what the ecosystem services are and how do we categorize them. The 2 key points one should take away from her presentation are that first, the ecosystem services are the benefits people obtain from the living nature. So the focus is on the living part of the whole story. And second, that the focal point of the concept of ecosystem services are humans. After all, a service doesn't exist without someone being able to enjoy it. So the whole concept is created around the ways in which the abundance of ecosystem services around us is satisfying the needs of us, our species, the Homo sapiens. Just let me admit some new people. Okay, great. Now, in the second lecture that followed Marija's presentation, Master of Science Sanja Pokrajac from the Worldwide Fund for Nature dove deeper into the concept, explaining the history of its development and the current status of its integration into global, regional, and national politics. There are also 2 key points to take away from her presentation. So first is the good news. For all of those who seek the policy on which they can anchor their fieldwork on ecosystem services assessment and valuation, they can find it in a number of documents, such as laws, treaties, and strategic development plans on topics such as sustainable development, nature protection, biodiversity conservation, or specifically ecosystem services. The bad news is that the past few decades, although bringing mention of this topic under various names, as you can see, saw insufficient action needed to ensure it being valued in the right way. Many of the targets weren't met. The deadlines to achieve a certain level of protection kept being pushed and pushed further away, and the ESAF agenda marginalized. That is happening globally, and unfortunately, we are seeing strong examples of it in the Western Balkans as well, which is why we wanted to do something about it by creating and implementing this project in the first place. So this is some background that you needed for all of us who were there yesterday, just a nice reminder and an easy segue into today's program. And for all of you who were there yesterday, just some basic information on which you can build up everything we will be talking about today. So our first lecturer for the day will present the basic information on ecosystem services, assessment and valuation methods, approaches and implementation steps. His name is Dženan Bećirović, and he is an assistant professor at the University of Sarajevo at the Faculty of Forestry. Dženan holds a PhD in the field of forest policy and economics, with a specialization in forest economics and marketing. He has more than 10 years of working experience in the field of forestry, nature protection, and sustainable management of natural resources. His research and professional interests are related to the ecosystem services assessment and valuation and ecosystem services-based natural resources management. Currently, he is working as a corresponding lead author in the National IPBES assessment of ecosystem services for Bosnia and Herzegovina. During his lecture, please make use of the chat box. As you remember from yesterday, and for all of you that don't know, we really value your feedback. We save it all, and we will come back to everything that you write, so questions and insights in the Q&A session, which will follow the discussion, the presentation. So please, Dženan, welcome.
Thank you, dear Angela. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone. As Angela announced me, my name is Dženan Bećirović, and I'm going to present the basic information related to the ecosystem services assessment and valuation. I hope that you can see the PowerPoint presentation that we prepared for these purposes. So basically, I'm today going to talk about three following questions. The first question would be, what is the ecosystem services assessment and valuation? The second is how to perform an ecosystem service assessment and valuation exercise. And at the end, how to communicate the results regarding the ecosystem services assessment and valuation. In my speech, I am going to use ESAV or ecosystem services assessment and valuation as synonyms. So just as information for you, so you can follow my lecture. Yesterday, we saw that basically, as Maria explained, ecosystem services are those benefits that people somehow obtain from ecosystem. These benefits are, as Angela also mentioned at the beginning of her of introductory part to today's webinar, she said also that without people, the ecosystem services are not there. Even though they exist, they are somehow connected with the ecosystems, and they are somehow connected with the nature. But ecosystem services help us to understand how people depend on the nature, and in the ways ecosystem services as a concept help us to create conditions for support, for enables, and also enhance human well-being. This is untypical landscape from Bosnia and Herzegovina. For those that are not from Western Balkans, this is a typical landscape that you can also see in all other countries that are somehow associated with the Western Balkan. When we are looking at this picture, we can see one beautiful landscape, one beautiful ecosystem, but also these ecosystems provides different kind of services, different kind of products, and space for people to somehow implement different kind of activities, such as recreation, such as taking products from these kind of ecosystem and similar. It is quite important to somehow assess and evaluate the benefits that people gain from the ecosystem. It can be done by applying a range of different kind of methods. They are all available. They are differ in terms of complexity, but they can help, starting from mapping and modeling supply and demand of ecosystem servicing, and also up to appraising the ecosystem services economic and non-economic importance through different kind of valuation techniques. Why it is important to do it? It is important because it can help us in the decision-making context and to create better policy, better decision-making activities, better management activities related to some ecosystems. In that case, the results of ESAV can be also utilized to support conservation policies as well as sustainable development processes at different administrative level, depending on the complexity of these administrative levels. Why do we need the ecosystem services assessment and evaluation? When we are looking at one ecosystem, there is a range of ecosystem services that these ecosystems provide. In the first sense, we need to have ecosystem services assessment and evaluation in order to overlap the situation that is currently, at least in the Western Balkans. It is that ecosystem services are somehow undervalued in the decision-making context. Also, in the most of the cases, the information related to the ecosystem services are not included in the policy and not included in the markets. And in that case, the usage of natural resources isn't effective, isn't efficient. Also, some policy and economic decisions are based on the just partial information related to the ecosystem services. And in that case, some development opportunities are often missed. ESAV can help us first to somehow guide decision-making process, to support protection of management and protection of natural resources, as well as management of those resources, enhance sustainable flows and benefits from current and future generation, as well as be some kind of tools to attract new financing sources. ESAV, if it is implemented in right manner, can help managers to justify the importance of various activities that they are doing regarding the site management in some specific areas. And also it helps that natural resources are more effectively managed, as well as it helps to allocate financial or human resources for the areas that are most needed in the certain period of time. The generic objective of ESAV is somehow to create information, to create preconditions for better informed decision-making, and also to help increase the awareness about nature's importance for human well-being. In that sense, the ESAV can be applied for the different kind of activities. The first activities is related to the undertaking scoping and situation analysis. This is helpful for establishing initial overview of ecosystem services, their current status, as well as relative importance to the different kind of stakeholders. Beside that, the ecosystem assessment and evaluation techniques can support planning processes or be used for advocating policy options. In that sense, this can help for a better policy or decision-making process, and also it can somehow be used to effectively manage the natural or ecosystems at all. The third potential application is related to refining the policy instrument. This is quite important because in the situation, at least in the Western Balkans, we are facing the transition toward European Union regulation and rules, and countries have to apply new ways of dealing with the natural resources and ecosystems at all. Ecosystem services assessment and evaluation can help with identifying livelihood, development, and investment opportunities. It is quite important because it somehow enables information what actually the local communities, local people would like, and then present the information on a way on a way that it is understandable for the different kind of stakeholders associated with the natural resources at the local level. It also provides guidance for development assistance. This means that basically information for the gain from ecosystem services assessment and evaluation can help choosing between different options for development, for construction, for protection of the nature, or for sustainable usage of natural resources. At the end, the information that are gained from ecosystem services assessment and evaluation can help with the resolution of conflicts. It somehow can help with the management of the conflict that often arise when we are talking about natural resource management, at least in the Western Balkans, but it is general situation when we are talking about scarce resources. After providing some information, the question is who can basically benefit from measuring, creating information, modeling, and assessment of ecosystem services. This basically depends on the reasons why the SAF was conducted at the first place, and generally main audience can be different, and somehow in most of the cases it overlaps depending from the situation or depending from the reasons that SAF was conducted. In the first place, if SAF is conducted for the purpose of public policy support, the government, local communities, indigenous traditional people, international communities can gain some good information to help them to have better decision-making process. If the SAF is conducted related to the site management, definitely site managers and the people that are somehow responsible for monitoring and management of the sites will get the most of the information that can help them when it comes to the communication with the local communities or other regional or national authorities. If the situation is related to the human well-being, or when we are talking about connection between broader stakeholders and some specific ecosystems, definitely communities will get the most from the SAF exercise, as well as managers, land and water managers, communities living near to the sites. This is specifically related to the protected areas, depending on the type of the protected areas. When we are talking about SAF that is conducted with the goal to improve the planning process, definitely government agency as well as conservation organization and donors will get the most of the information provided by SAF. When we are talking about importance of engagement, the private sector into the decision-making process, SAF will definitely help to create some kind of public-private partnership, or to get to gain partners that will be interested for some initiative related to the development opportunities or related to the nature conservation or similar activities. SAF can be also used for funding and investment, and at the end, the SAF is and the methods that are applicable in the SAF can be used to knowledge generation, or to create new knowledge. In this sense, the stakeholder engagement is quite important, and basically the SAF should, in all steps that during the implementation of SAF activities, stakeholders have to be involved. They can help to identify relevant ecosystem services that needs to be assessed. They also can provide the source of the data information, and especially local knowledge related to ecosystem services. They can, at the end, help to validate ecosystem services assessment results and to give some kind of credibility to those results. And at the end, they can ensure that assessment results are actually used in a management or policy decision-making process. So the stakeholder engagement and participation of the broader audience in the ESAF implementation is quite important. The next question that we are going to somehow address here is the question of how to basically perform an ESAF. There is growing amount of literature related to the different kind of methods that are somehow applicable in the ESAF exercises. They are basically, there is three different categories of methods that can be used in ESAF exercise. The first would be the methods that are somehow related to the mapping, or they are called biophysical methods. They are focused on the trade-offs between different kind of ecosystem services and between different kind of ecosystems. There is quite number of large number of methods that are in this category of ESAF methods, starting from matrix and spreadsheet approaches, coming to the specific models and modeling techniques that can help better understand what is basically the situation with ecosystem services at some specific local or regional sites. The second group of methods are related to the socio-cultural methods, and they somehow serve for understanding preferences or social values regarding the ecosystem services. There are quite few methods related to social-cultural aspects, starting from the deliberative valuation methods up to the photo elicitation surveys. Nowadays, the researcher and practitioners use the social medias to somehow see what actually people prefer when it comes to the ecosystems, when it comes to the landscapes and other aspects. And at the end, there is a lot of methods that somehow try to put the monetary value on the ecosystem services, and they are basically differ from aspects that they are using, and they are differed from the data that they are using for basic assessments. At the end, in the new research literature, the integrating approaches are somehow becoming more and more important, because no single methods can evaluate or can assess everything what is related with the ecosystem on some ecosystem and ecosystem services on one specific area. In that sense, most of the researcher, most of the projects and initiatives somehow prefer using different kind of methods for assessing and evaluating ecosystem services. In that sense, there are various tools for measuring, modeling, and valuing ecosystem services that are developed recently. There is a lot of guiding documents that can help you and other interesting stakeholders when it's come to the ESAF. I just in this slide put some of most important of them, and those that can be found in the global net. There are also numerous computer-based modeling tools such as Invest, Natural Capital, such as artificial intelligence for ecosystem services, costing nature. Most of those methods are somehow tested and used for the real concrete specific cases and ecosystem services. And if you would like to know more about tools and methods that can be used for ESAF, I strongly recommend that you visit the IPBS International Panel for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. that has really good inventory of different kind of methods, and they are scientifically working a lot on this field. While also there is one great project that was also supported by GIZ. It is called Values. For those that haven't heard, there are a lot of methods, lot of guiding documents that can help while selecting the different methods for ESAF exercises. The next question, when we know that there is a lot of methods that can be used in ESAF, is how to select appropriate assessment and evaluation methods. This basically depends on the many factors. The first is related to the decision-making context. The second are related to the ecosystem services that will be assessed or evaluated. The third are related to the strengths and limitation of different methods, because as I said, no single method is robust enough to help us understand everything what is happening with the ecosystem services. And the fourth is pragmatic reasons. The first are related to the available data, because ESAF can use existing data, and when we don't need to go to additionally to collect the data, it is better. It is always better to use existing data and to somehow try to analyze them deeply in order to understand what is happening with the ecosystem and their services, and also the resources that we have at our disposal and expertise that are here also somehow help us to select or to make a decision which kind of approaches will we use when we are talking about ESAF exercises. And I mentioned that Values has developed the online inventory of different kind of methods, and it can really be useful tool to help the practitioner to select method for the questions that they would like to answer while conducting ESAF. The question is where to start. So the first step is start with the assessment of end user needs. In that sense, it is always good to implement some kind of approaches such as surveys or focus groups or in-depth interviews with the people that are connected with the specific ecosystem. In the second case, it is recommendation to use different kind of combination of methods that will enable you to answer to the questions that are at the beginning, that are created at the beginning of the ESAF activities. And the third step is use, if it is possible, an integrating approach to draw different assessment together. So use the biophysical information, use socio-cultural information, as well as monetary information in order to give credibility to the ecosystem service assessment and evaluation exercise. ESAF always and often involves seeking answer to the different kind of questions, and they are basically listed here in this slide, starting from the priorities or priority ecosystem services that are important in the given situation. While asking these questions, it is always important to find the ways how to involve different stakeholders, different people, and different actors that are important and that will help the ESAF to gain credibility. In all cases, the concept of ESAF will help to make visible of those aspects that are not available, that are not visible in the current system of policy or decision-making process. And in that sense, the interdisciplinary approaches are important to understand ecological trends and as well as the interaction between ecosystems and human as well. This is something that also Maria mentioned yesterday, that the multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and cross-sector approach is required in order to understand what is basically happening with the ecosystems, as well as how those ecosystems can benefit to the people. The ESAV should be guided with the following principles. The first is that ESAV should address development issues in the real world, and in that sense, it have to be politically relevant to the specific areas. The ESAVs should be oriented toward process. It is not it is always good to have the ongoing process that will be able to address the specific aspects of ecosystem management in the longer time period. Also, the third principle is related to the engagement of the stakeholders and various interest groups. It is always important to give a flow to the different kind of stakeholders as well as interest groups, and to enable conditions to hear their thoughts, and to, if it is feasible, to involve their arguments into the decision-making process. In that sense, the ESAVs should also help us to broaden the perspective of management or protection or development of the specific areas, giving the decision makers better information for understanding the situation. And the basic principle for implementing ESAV effectively is to have continuous communication with the different kind of stakeholders and different kind of interest group. In that sense, the theoretically six following steps are important for implementing the ESAV. The steps in detail will be explained through the presentation of my colleague Amni, and I'm here just going to briefly show it to you, while the Amni will talk about this into the details. We are coming to the communication, or third part of this presentation. The communication of ESAV results is quite important. It has two goals. The primary goal is to communicate information to support decision-making for which the assessment was undertaken. It can be related to the conservation, it can be related to the development activities, or it can be just related to the overcoming the conflicts. So it is most important to communicate with the people, with decision makers, and all stakeholders that are directly involved in the specific situation. And the secondary goal for the ESAV exercise is to somehow share the results broadly, to build knowledge base on ecosystem services, and to support future decision making, to basically show the importance of the specific area for the broader audience. In that sense, the recommendation is when you gain the result, when you have the result of the ESAV exercise, to create summary for decision makers. This summary is most useful for decision maker if it states briefly and explicitly what was included and what was excluded from the assessment and why. And also, when we provide the summary for decision maker, the decision maker can quickly use the results in their argumentation for some activities or against some development, conservation, or management activities in the specific areas. When we are talking about communication with the broader audience, it is important to create a specific message that can be used by ecosystem services practitioners, and environmental and natural resource manager and decision makers, and at the end, broader audience that are interested for the specific ecosystem that was analyzed or that was assessed and evaluated. At the end, we can use different kind of tools that can help us to communicate the message related to the ESAV. We can use websites or internet. We can use interactive map. In the recent time, a lot of mobile application or application for smart devices were developed for promotion of ecosystem services assessment and evaluation approach, as well as we can, if the situation allow us, communicate with the community and different stakeholders live while organizing workshops and the other activities. We are coming to the end of the presentation. I prepared the list of the references that are useful for understanding and going into the deeply related to the ESAV or ecosystem services assessment and evaluation. Due to the time constraint, I wasn't able to go much into the detail when it comes to the specific methods that we can use, but these references have a lot of resources that can help you to understand the specific methods that maybe can be applicable to your activities. In that sense, the ESAV can help us in overcoming the different approaches. We are somehow stubborn, and as donkeys, we are always somehow not so ready to change our activities, to change our way of implementing activities. ESAV can provide information to work together, to communicate better, and to at the end fulfill our interest and interests that are related to the better management of the natural resources here in the Western Balkans as well as globally. If you have any questions that are not covered by this presentation, these are my contacts. You can contact me and I will be glad to answer to every questions in this session as well as afterward. Thank you for your attention, and I give a floor to Angela.
Thank you so much, Janan, for a really wonderful presentation. I can see that it sparked a lot of interest from our comment session. So I would like to go ahead and ask you some of the questions that the participants prepared for you, some of the suggestions as well. And just a quick note to everyone, all the questions that we can't address right now in the short Q&A session after the first lecture will be addressed later in the discussion part after the second lecture. So don't worry, we will answer everything that we can. If even after the discussion part, there's still some questions unanswered, we always have the email communication after the webinar for it. So great. The first question is asked by Lucy Emerton. She says, what a great presentation. I'd love to hear about some examples of ESAV studies and why or how they've been carried out from Janan or from other participants. That would be really interesting. So Janan, do you want to start?
Okay. I'm going to speak just. I'm going to speak from the experience that we have in Bosnia and Herzegovina. There are several studies that were done related to the specific conservation activities or management activities. But in the most of the cases, I'm coming from the forestry field of interest. I'm coming from the forestry sector. When we are talking about Bosnia and Herzegovina, forestry is quite important, economic as well as social sector to be for the people in general. And in the forestry, there is no lot examples that ESAF is actually used. While from generally in our region, at least in Bosnia and Herzegovina, most of the initiatives that are related to the ESAF activities are somehow internationally driven, implemented with the support of the implemented with the support of international donors and implemented by, at least in the most of the cases, by international experts. We still lacking the knowledge for the specific methods that can be used to understand and to implement ESAF activities. This is just my perspective from coming from the forestry sector and from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I would also, because you listened to me for the half an hour, I would give floor to other participants if they have something to add.
Wonderful, thank you so much. We have here some people sending links to studies. So Juraj Svajda said hello from Slovakia. Here an example of ES assessment at national level which followed MAES process, and there's a link for that, thank you. Then we have, hi everyone, results of the MAES project in Romania can be found here. Again, a link to it. Lucy Emerton added an example that relates to a question from one of the other participants that is about ESAF integration into local policies. So there is a link about an example from Brazil. And Lucy also added a link to some other examples. Thank you so much. And on reviews of ESAF. So we have a lot of links for everyone to enjoy as well. Because we are limited by time, I would not jump to another question right now. I would leave them for the discussion. What I would like to ask now is, does anyone else have any examples to add to this question? So to say them or to type them in the chat box while we're here. Okay, Maria.
I would just like to give a brief comment because I saw one of the comments by Sandra. I don't know who Sandra is. And she says that intangible ecosystem services are very difficult to value. Now, I just want to make sure that people understand that valuing is not, sometimes people equate value with monetary value. And yes, in that respect, some ecosystem services are hard or even impossible to put the actual monetary price on. But the valuation process we're talking about here is broader than that. If you just say that people value something like, for instance, they say that this forest is important to us because our ancestors lived there and because we like to walk there, that is a value, and it's enough to just to demonstrate, just to reveal that people value this for other purposes and not just monetary. And for purposes of valuation studies, that can be enough. Because you reveal it, you know, maybe the minister or policy maker in a ministry is not aware that people value this forest for these purposes, and just revealing that they do make may impact the decision-making process. I just wanted to kind of clarify that.
If I may just add that in that sense, the social cultural methods will be used, such as methods that are somehow connected with asking and communicating with the local stakeholders and interest group on the intensively, in order to see what the preferences of those stakeholders are when it comes to the ecosystem, to the specific ecosystem services.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have anything else to add? Okay.
Can I add one more?
Of course. Just briefly, because we are going to keep it tight in this part. Yeah.
Very briefly, to try to reply to Bianca's question. theoretically, yes, one person can do the assessment and evaluation, but you do need to have quite an extensive knowledge, and it's easier to have a team. Like, for instance, I'm personally currently involved in one assessment and evaluation process, and I do need my colleague economist who is doing the monetary evaluation. So I could do it, but obviously it would need me time to learn about methods, to know where the data is, to know these different calculations. So basically you do need a team. Okay.
And also, if I may add, it depends from the purpose of the ESAV that you would like to conduct. If the question that you are asking at the beginning is something quite complex, involving different aspects of the ecosystem management, then you will probably need a lot of experts, a lot of expert knowledge in order to understand what is basically happening related to the specific ecosystem. If the exercise is small, if the ESAV is related to the one specific ecosystem services, then you can maybe do it by yourself. It depends from the purposes that you are trying to implement while taking ESAV activities.
Wonderful, thank you. Actually, both of you at the same time addressed some other questions that our participants asked in the chat box. So once again, thank you for the wonderful presentation, Janan. Thank you, Maria, for the insights, and many thanks to everyone providing links and their own feedback on the topic. Now we've come to the second lecture for the day, and our second speaker will introduce you to the idea of ecosystem services mainstreaming. So we will learn what it means and why it is important for all of us gathered here from Avni Hajdari, lecturer from the University of Pristina in Kosovo. Avni holds a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's and a PhD degree in ecology. He has 15 years of experience in nature protection sector, including sustainable use of natural resources, establishment and management of protected areas and species protection. Currently, he is focused on educational programs and projects related to protected areas management, natural resource management, as well as assessment and valuation of ecosystem services. Again, make sure to use the chat box to share your thoughts on the topic Mr. Hajdari addresses in his lecture, because immediately after that lecture, we will come to the discussion and it will be a time for all of us to talk in depth about it. So, Avni, welcome.
Thank you, Angela, for this nice introduction, and welcome everybody to this presentation, which is focused in mainstreaming of the ecosystem services in the sustainable development of a selected region, which could be a municipality, a county, or a wider region. Yesterday, we learned about the ecosystem services concept. We learned about the history of ecosystems. Today, we learned from Janan's presentation about evaluation of the ecosystem services, which are really important things, but they are not enough. In order to bring the theory about ecosystem services concepts into the practice, and in order to solve the problems in the real world and to achieve the sustainable development, we have to integrate ecosystem services in different programs, projects, policies in the selected regions. So what is mainstreaming? Mainstreaming is a process of using different ideas, new concepts, new information to integrate ecosystem services in different programs, projects, policies, plans, in order to achieve a sustainable development in the selected region. It's a very important process, and because of that, many different actors are calling to integrate ecosystem services in the relevant documents, starting from the international organization like CBD, which is stating straightforward to mainstream the importance of mainstreaming of the biodiversity in the existing documents, or creating new documents which will integrate ecosystem services in those. Also, the mainstreaming is supported by different non-governmental organization, by different international governmental organization. It is supported also by EU biodiversity strategy. It is supported by different regional body like RCC or BDTF, etc. But also it is supported by national biodiversity strategy action plans of the Western Balkan countries. But what may look like the mainstreaming? In order to elaborate how mainstreaming looks like and the aim of the mainstreaming, I will use this so-called driver, pressure, state, impact, and response model to explain how look like the mainstreaming. So mainstreaming is revising the existing documents like policies, plans, programs, and the project for the selected region. And if it's needed, creating a new documents in order to achieve a sustainable development. But it is not about creating the parallel or artificial system, completely new things, but revising the existing documents. Why we are revising the documents in the selected region? We are revising to integrate ecosystem services, aiming to minimize the negative impact in that area, to maximize the positive contribution to state of the ecosystem services and to increase the ecosystem functionality and ecosystem services, and to enhance the human well-being in that region. When we say to minimize the negative impacts, this means to decrease the drivers, which are socioeconomic aspects of that region. For example, needs for firewood or unemployment rate in that region, or to decrease pressure, which are direct human activity related to that region. So if we address very well by mainstreaming of ecosystem services in the process of revising the documents, we will minimize the human activities in that region. For example, decreasing the illegal logging. If we minimize the human impact in that region, we will decrease the driver, we will decrease the pressure, and of course, we will have enhance the state of the ecosystems. So we will have better quality of the forest, but also the more forest areas. So if we have a better and more forest, then they will be more functional and they will provide better services like more primary productions. And then if we have a more primary production, we will extract more wood from the forest. And if we have more food from forest, then we can get more incomes and the human well-being will improve. By doing that, the mainstreaming is aiming to achieve a new development, to decrease and minimize the impact of the humans in the nature, to maximize and to enhance the state of the biodiversity, including ecosystems, and to enhance the well-being. By doing that, we are creating a new situation in region, socioeconomic aspects, and biodiversity in terms of biodiversity also. And in this situation, also the use of ecosystem services is changing. Maria mentioned yesterday a nice example, how by the time can change the uses of biodiversity. For example, in the past time, we was using the hunting for food, but nowadays for recreation aspects. So it's the using of biodiversity is completely changing. So the aim of integration of ecosystems in the documents is to change the situation, to decrease the human impact and to improve the state of the biodiversity in that area. Mainstreaming, it's not a single step. So it's not enough just once to revise the documents and to integrate the ecosystem services in that document, but it's a continuous process. So always we have to revise the documents to improve the situation and to enhance the human well-being. And by doing that, we will achieve a new development. So it's again appear a need to revise and to revise and to revise. So mainstreaming is a long-term process and a continuous process. So every time we have to change and to adopt the documents, existing documents, to the needs and real development which is going on in that selected region. While the mainstreaming, it's a continuous process, and it's an ongoing process. We have specific situations or windows or opportunities where we can integrate the ecosystem services. And these windows are called entry points, which are very important things in the mainstreaming process. For example, if we want to decrease the drivers or socioeconomic aspects in the region, for example, if we want to decrease the rate of unemployment, so for us, a kind of entry point would be the strategy for poverty reduction. Or if we want to decrease the direct pressure, for example, illegal logging, so entry points for us could be revising of the protected area development or management plans of protected area, etc. Or if we want to improve the state of the biodiversity directly, so the entry point for that could be, for example, a program or plans for plantation of the forest, or etc. Entry points are main thing in the process of mainstreaming, and you can find the entry points in different levels, starting from the national level, sectorial level, and also in the local level. In national level, you can find in different documents, for example, in the national vision of the country, the strategy for poverty reduction, or in national budget, etc. In sectoral level, you can use the entry points, as the entry points can be used different sectorial plans, strategies, policies, projects, etc., etc. And the sectors which are more related to the aspects of ecosystem services are agriculture, forestry, fishing, energy, transport, tourism management, waste management, etc. But also the entry points could be found in the local level. For example, municipality development or development decentralization documents which are related in that country. The entry points, it's interesting but and important, but another thing what is important in this aspect, it's a harmonization of the documents between each other in each level. For example, we can prepare a very nice strategy for a certain sector, for example, agriculture or forestry. But if it's not foreseen and if it's not harmonized with the national level, and for that strategy is not foreseen any money for its implementation, so it's not bringing the desired results. Or also we can prepare a very good municipality development, but if it's not harmonized with the national vision development and other documents, so it's not bringing the desired results. So to achieve a sustainable development, it's needed to be harmonized, all of the relevant documents with each other. Yeah, I think all of us agree about the importance of ecosystems, the mainstream of the ecosystem services in the different documents, but how to integrate them. There are a lot of methods, some of them Chenan mentioned previously, are helping to or guiding us to mainstream the ecosystem services in the development, sustainable development process. I'm not going to mention all of this due to the time limitation, but for this presentation and for upcoming training, if we are going to deliver this trainings, we will focus and use the IES approach, or integrating ecosystem into the development planning which is the part of the value project launched by GIZ. Why we selected this method to use? The reason is that this is a very practical method. It's a straightforward method. It's a not fixed method, but it could be really easy adjusted to use in different scenarios, in different cases, to integrate ecosystem services in real world revising documents. Another thing, the things that push us to select this method is that this is providing a lot of materials which are needed to be used for participants, for trainers, and this is giving a lot of examples and exercise that can be used to integrate ecosystem services in the decision-making process. And also, recently, the materials of this methodology are translated in different or in most local language which are spoken in Western Balkan countries. So it is useful also for the people which are not familiar with the English language. This is a stepwise approach for systematically assessing, evaluation, and integration of ecosystem services in the development planning. I mentioned that this is not a fixed recipe, which make this method useful in different scenarios and different conditions. This method can be used by different people, like advisors, project staffs, development planners to integrate ecosystem services in the plans, development plans, for example, sector-specific spatial planning, environmental and climate assessment, etc. So it's quite a wide used method and can be used for different purposes. This is, except that this is a stepwise approach, this is a participatory approach, and in each of the process, it's very important to include the stakeholders and to in different ways. The method consists in the 6 steps, and each of the steps I'm going to elaborate briefly, also bringing some few examples, but I'm not going to explain in detail the examples due to the time limitation, but I keep the examples in the presentation as we are going to share the presentation with you, and then you can have a closer look in the presentation when you have a time and if you see that those examples are with interest for you. The first step of these methods involves undertaking the groundwork that is needed to start the work for IES process. And here we have to define the objectives, what we want to achieve with this process and with implementing of the next steps. We have to set up the scope, the geographic area where we are going to work in a municipality, in the country or wider region. And also we have to define the stakeholders. And also we have to define in which way we are going to engage the stakeholders in the next coming process or steps. The second step is screening and prioritizing of ecosystem services. So by collecting the information by the first step, you will create a long list of ecosystem services. So this will help you to screen ecosystem services which are present in the region. I added here only a few, but of course in the real life, the list of ecosystem services will be very long. And then by using this matrix, you can make a rate of ecosystems which are present in the region in relation to the development objectives, measures, or activity. How the development objective is related to specific ecosystem services in terms of dependency or in terms of impact. And then you can rate with 0 if it's not any connection, with 1 if it's a minor connection, and with 2 if it's a major connection. And you can do it this rate of each ecosystem services with each development activity. And then you can sum those scores, and those ecosystem services which has a higher aggregate score can be selected and prioritized to be included in the next step of the ecosystem, to be integrated in the development plans. So this step helps you to screen the ecosystem services, also to prioritize the ecosystem services for the selected region. As you now have the list of prioritized ecosystem services, you have to identify their current state, the baseline, which is very important because you have to know which is the real situation of the ecosystem in the field. And then you can make an analysis for future changes and in their demand or supply by using arrow, for example. And also you can define by using this kind of matrix which drivers are impacting the selected ecosystem services. And also you can define here which are the stakeholders related to each of the ecosystem services. The step 3 is complement the step 4, as the step 3 is talking more about the biophysical aspect of the ecosystem. The step 4 is more focused in the institutional and cultural framework, and this will give you an overview of institutional and cultural framework, analysis of the policy regulation, also informal rulers which are present in the selected region, and also the key institution and traditional authority that are influencing ecosystem services. This also help you to understand and underlying the causes of the existing drivers which affect ecosystem services in the selected region. To do that, this is a kind of matrix which can help you to record and to make a list of initiatives which are present in that region, like policies, market or fiscal oriented regulations, informal rulers, and also you can, this enable you to distinguish the positive and negative incentives. Also, another matrix which can be used and help you to apprise the institutional cultural framework is this matrix, in which you can list the stakeholder, usually those stakeholders which have a power in the decision making, and then you can list the units, from which units they are coming, the position that they have in this unit, the interest and why they have that interest, and then you have to define the level of power from high to low, the influence that they have, because this is important, because if they have a higher power, they can help very, very much in the integration of ecosystem services in the revising documents. Also, you can, by using this matrix, you can see the possible alliances between different stakeholders and the conflicts. You can identify which of the conflicts are and between each stakeholders which are taking place or are related to the specific ecosystem services. The next step is step 5, preparing the better decision making after passing the previous steps, which is based in identification of the risk and opportunities. This will give you an pricing different policy option instruments in order to maintain and increase the flow of ecosystem services which are related to your development plan. It can help you to identify the entry point, which are key, as we mentioned previously, in the decision-making process, and to determine the economic value of priority ecosystem services. And for determining, you can use ESAV method, which Cenan presented before. For preparing a better decision, you can use this matrix, for example, and by this matrix, you can, in the first column, you can add the development goal, which are related to the ecosystem services, and then related risk and opportunity to that ecosystem services. What do you want to change? Which are new policies, options, or what the which are different policies which can help you to promote, for example, the specific development goal, and also this will help you to find specific situation in which will you enable an easier integration of ecosystem services in the decision-making process. We mentioned that entry points are interesting and important thing in the mainstreaming process, and here is an example where which you can use how to integrate the how to select the entry points to integrate in order to integrate the ecosystem services in the different programs. For example, if the development plan is for the selected region is enhancing the sustainable uses of non-timber forest products, then you can find different entry points, like using certified products or taxes, fees, or charges for using of natural resourcing or specific organic certification. And for each entry points, then you can find instruments or tools which can able to be implemented the integrated ecosystem services in the sustainable development process. And the last step is implementing of the changing. And in this step, you have to implement the strategy because you created previous steps. You have to create a working plan, including instruments. You have to see how to involve the stakeholders. You have to divide the responsibility for each action, and as well as you have to foresee the financial resources. And this is an example, a table which can help you to implement changing in the next steps. In this table, for example, you can add the measures which are needed to be taken in order to implement the integration of ecosystem services in the decision-making process. And then for each measure, you can list the task, and for each task, you have to define who is responsibility and also the resources like a budget, people, and everything what is needed to be around the integration of ecosystem services in the practice. And finally, mainstreaming represent an important steps which allow us to bring the theory to the practice and from advices to the action in order to make the concept of ecosystem services and the information gathered by ESAV sustainable in the policy planning and management. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Avni, for a really wonderful presentation full of many tools and advice and practical insights that are definitely going to, and already are giving me many ideas related to my work. And I'm sure there are many people here who have the same experience. Now, let me just come back to the chat to, first of all, address some questions related to your presentation. People are thanking you. So congratulating you on the wonderful presentation, and some are also having some technical questions. For example, Sinisha Rudan is asking a very nice mainstreaming diagram and explanation. Thanks, Mr. Haidari. I hope we can share and reuse it with addressing you as a source.
Sorry again.
So Sinisha Rudan is asking, can he share and reuse the diagram you introduced at the beginning of your presentation on mainstreaming as to use it in their own work?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
for sure.
Great.
Yeah, feel free, and I will be happy.
Great. I will just remind everyone that you will get a package of materials that we have prepared for you in the days following the webinar, comprising of both the impressions and some details that we talked about, that we used for the webinar, as well as some materials that we've created as a tool set for you to use in your work. Then there was one more question from Vuk Markovic. Is there a link on this guideline in Serbo-Montenegrin integrating ecosystem services into development planning? Lucy mentioned that Maria and Jovana, so the organizers from the hosting NGO, will be sharing this with you as part of the package of materials. I've just checked with them, it's true, so you will get this guide as part of the package that I just mentioned, where the presentations will be as well. So now I'd like to go all the way back to the first questions that we left unanswered and begin the discussion with both our speakers, so Avni and Jenan, but also all of you who feel like you want to contribute. So some of the questions, Lucy, thank you so much, have already been answered in the chat box. For example, who is doing assessment and evaluation? Jana and Maria mentioned it, that it depends on the purpose of the ESAV, if I remember it correctly. Then if anyone wants to add to this, or it's okay? It's okay, okay, great. Then Ermelinda also asked, is there some kind of information which correlates smart investments with ecosystem services?
Generally, there is no single methods that can help to connect the smart investment with the ecosystem services, but the multidisciplinary and multi-methods approach can help to create information that can be used for investment purposes. And generally, all of the things that we have mentioned, starting from modeling techniques up to the monetary evaluation and non-monetary evaluation methods, can give the information. It depends. We are coming back to the beginning. It depends from the perspective, but I think that Lucy will have more information to add on this.
Sorry. Yes, I mean, I think that whole thing about smart investments, sorry, I got confused because I'm on the desktop and on my phone, because one's good for seeing and the other's good for speaking. And sometimes I forget which one I'm switching on. Yeah, I mean, I think there, you know, we could talk for hours, but yes, we're seeing a lot of climate smart investments in relation to ecosystem services. We're seeing things like payment for ecosystem services. So we're seeing a lot of emergence of linking those two things together. But I think that's going to have to be the topic of our next seminar.
Great suggestion. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you for all the work you're doing in the chat box. Now, the next question was from Sandra. Her concern is that intangible ecosystem services are very difficult to value or cannot be valued at all. Is there a way to value intangible ecosystem services? Or what other valuation can we integrate to it in order to give value on them? Thank you very much. This is a very interesting question. Jenan?
But basically, Maria and me spoke about this in this short
yes, exactly. Yes.
question and answer session. But in general, there are a lot of methods that are based on the stakeholder perception of the importance of different kinds of ecosystem services. They can be integrated as a part of the concrete ecosystem service assessment and evaluation exercise, and then they can help to understand the attitudes toward intangible or those ecosystem services that are monetary, not easy to evaluate.
May I add something?
Of course.
Ecosystem services, it's really, most of them, it's really difficult to be evaluated but they can quite easy compare with other ecosystem services by rating. With 0, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, depending your system, what you are selecting. And this can help you to evaluate ecosystem services in comparison to others to see which is the more important and which is less important. Thank you.
And if I just may add, coming back to this, what Arni actually said, there is techniques called peer comparison, where you basically compare different ecosystem services, giving them the rate of the importance and comparing one with each other. At the end, when you finish this exercise, you will get the ratings of different ecosystem services, coming from the most important up to the less important for the specific purposes.
Great, thank you so much. Can you just tell me how to spell it so I can type it for some people in case they want to Google it immediately?
So paired comparison. Paired comparison.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As in pairs, 2 by 2.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, great. Oh, thank you, Maria. I can see it. Great. Would you like to add something as well? Because I see you have switched on your microphone.
Yeah, sorry, maybe I forgot. No, I think they really answered the question, and yeah, I mean, just to remember, sometimes it might be easy to get stuck but also always remember that the potential of an ecosystem to provide the service is still not a service if people don't value it or if they're not beneficiaries. So that's why you have all this sort of screening step and then the prioritizing step. So, you will end up with a couple of sort of priority ecosystem services that you can value. And then again, you have to be pragmatic, as Jenna and Amni said, because if you don't have data to value it, then just don't bang your head on it. You can kind of have enough information to put a value, and again, it doesn't need to be a monetary value. It can be just like, you can explain it in qualitative terms that people value this because of, I don't know, history or culture or whatever, and this may be enough in a particular situation. So once again, don't equate valuation with like monetary or economic valuation. Again, you have to be practical and just to see what's there to make priorities. And these methods that Jen and Amni talked about are there to sort of help you focus your work and extract the best possible message for the purpose that you are doing this for.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Would anyone else like to add to this topic?
Can I maybe add something? Hello, everybody. My name is Maria Stanisic from Center for Protection Research for Birds from Montenegro. Our organization has done a project related to assessment of the ecosystem services of one site at Ucin Salina. And I agree with everything that already Maria, Jenna, and Avni said, because it was quite challenging. If you don't have any data, it's very hard to make the monetary evaluation, but you can use quantitative and qualitative. You can use some quantitative and some qualitative descriptions to evaluate the ecosystem services. And we used a toolkit, which is developed by BirdLife International. I can share the link. it provides some guidelines how to use certain methods to assess some ecosystem services which site is providing, such as global climate, then cultural services, harvested wild goods. So there are toolkits that are being developed that can be used to assess some of the ecosystem services, but without input data that can be used, it is very hard to do the analysis. But even then, when it is important also when you don't have data, that it is a very important also, let's say, fact. And this is a stepping stone to do the further analysis and to engage people to work. Also, I would like to share that when it comes to evaluation of certain sites, that it is needed that you involve local communities, people who depend on the site. Without it, you cannot do anything. And also, I'm very curious to find out, maybe that will be the topic which will be to address tomorrow, how this guideline which is being prepared will be used by the public and civil servants, how they will use this to implement and integrate ecosystem services at the site. So thank you very much for these valuable two days. I get lots of different insights, and I'm looking forward to the third day to check, to find out more about how these guidelines that you developed is going to be used at the sites that we are all working at. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Would anyone like to comment on this? Okay, yes, I see Sinish, or was it a raised hand? Yes, it was. Okay.
It was a question. Well, actually, if somebody wants to answer this first, then I will wait.
Okay. Okay, no, go ahead, Sinish.
Okay, so thanks for the great presentations, both of these. And I would have a question for both, or either Mr. Haidari or Bečirović, or any other participants. So I believe we've seen that it's quite difficult and time and money consuming to create specialized evaluation of ecosystems. And then, like in our case, I'm coming from Belgrade, there was a very say, I could call it fights for preserving the city forest Košutnjak, the lungs of Belgrade. So far it's going on well, but until we have some very specialized evaluation of the ecosystem of this city forest Košutnjak, I believe that it would still be very useful to have some like more generalized evaluation of ecosystems of the city forests. It is more general than like some forest, but it's still very, I think, very usable for many of these city forests like Košutnjak. So I think the question is there some resources that we could search for some of these, or that somebody already knows something like that? Because I think for the first, it can still influence city design decision makers before we have this specific one, and it can be a good start for having the specific one. So for Mr. Bečirović or Haidari, do you know about some of these more generic resources, but they're still specialized and specific, like for the city forests? I would be very interested.
Yeah, Mr. Rudan, thank you for your question and a comment. I was a student at the University of Belgrade, and I live near to the Košutnjak forest. And so, as a person living in Sarajevo, I am also emotionally connected to the Košutnjak forest because I have good memories on that time. It is quite challenging to basically apply single methods for the specific complex cases such as relate to the Košutnjak. But when we are talking about urban environment, there are tools such as iTrees. This is computer-based, online computer-based modeling technique that can help to first of all geographically position the trees and the ecosystem, and to basically quantify the amount of ecosystem services that these specific trees in the cities or forests or specific urban green area in the city provides. And in that sense, when the quantifying is finalized, then the importance on monetary evaluation can be applied in order to see to provide the information for decision maker, basically help them to choose between different options. Because as I understand, when we are talking about Košutnjak, there is a plan to construct some kind of residential areas or something like that. So these methods can help to give information for different development options. If we stay with the green area, what we as a people will gain, or if the construction is done. So to choose between different alternatives and to somehow at the end select the best for the people and for the stakeholders that are interested in this specific area. And also me as citizens of Sarajevo, I'm also interesting for this part of the Belgrade. So we are talking about the monetary evaluation as well as cultural evaluation, because these are things that can help decision makers to come with a better decision at the end.
Wonderful, thank you, Jenan. Would Avni like to add something?
Actually, Jenan said most of the things what I was trying to say, but compared to the Jenan, I'm not familiar with this area. But I can share maybe an example what we did in Pristina. We have I guess a similar area which is very green, Germia, and after evaluation we worked quite hard in cooperation with the municipality in Pristina and declared that as a protected area regarding to protected landscape regarding to the IUCN. So now it's protected by law. We integrated that area. So I think we achieved the aim to save that green area, which is very close to the city and which is under the high pressure from the construction process.
Maybe I can add, I mean, I don't know the situation in Košutnjak. Is there like some plan to develop something there, or I guess, okay. So basically, yeah.
Cut like most of the trees, and not just to cut the trees, but to bring the transport supporting like these new buildings and so on. So even those the parts that are being like kept are going to be like hardly influenced by this.
Okay, well, basically, so you want to influence this municipal plan and to try to change it, yeah, by demonstrating the value of Košutnjak. So I don't know, maybe you don't need, again, you know, your target group in this case is the municipal planners, I guess. And, you know, just showing them, talking to them about, again, you have to have in mind what is the purpose of your evaluation, if you want to, and who is the target audience. So maybe they don't care about, you know, all the functions of the forests and all the birds that live there and the endemic species, you know. You have to then structure the main message, or to do the evaluation in a way so that they understand, you know, okay, so monetary evaluation will probably be a good way. So, you know, if you can demonstrate that if you cut this forest, you will lose this much money because of this and that, then that might be the best message they understand. That can be something that can influence, to show them that the value lost is greater than what they can gain by doing what they were planning to do. So kind of, you know, again, you always have, when you do evaluation, you always have to have in mind what is the purpose, what is the process that you want to influence, and who is the target audience here. And then also you go through all the different methods and you engage the wider stakeholders to sort of help you find the information and define the message that your target audience can understand and accept.
Thank you very much, everybody, for taking this time on answering.
Great, thank you so much. We have a next question. I see Lucy already provided some resources for research for the participant who asked it, so thank you, Lucy. So the question is, expands the Western Balkans area that we originally are addressing. So it is by Adamudilla Suleiman. In the context where I am, like Niger Republic, especially Agadez area, where there is scarcity of water, rain-fed agriculture is absent. The only kind of agriculture production is irrigation. So what kind of method is better to assess ecosystem services? Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. So does anyone?
This is quite complex question. I have to be honest, because it's somehow trying to get an answer to said this is the best method. Our message is that the appropriateness of the methods depend from the situation. So there are varieties of the methods that can be utilized to understand the linkages between forestry, agriculture, and ecosystem services that they are providing. But when we are talking about this specific area and the scarcity of the rest of the water, if I understand correctly, then definitely we would need more information in order to help you to maybe select the methods. What is my recommendation is to go to the sites that Lucy put it in the chat, or that we put it in our presentation. The values project or other resources that we mentioned there could help you to select the method, because they are based on the similar case studies that are implemented in the different geographical areas. So this would be my recommendation. Hope this helped to the Mr. Sule.
Wonderful, thank you. Great. Okay, let's see. The next question is for Avni from Robert. Did you apply such a process of mainstreaming ecosystem services into policy or practice to a certain level, for example, local, regional, or even national? Do you have any examples that we can explore? I know Lucy provided a lot of links, but because it was directed to Avni, let's see what you also have to add. Yes.
Thank you. But this process is quite young process in the Balkan, and also for us. We are working in a case revising a municipality plan in the municipality of Kosovo, but still we are in a very early stage, so I cannot share something with Robert. But Lucy shared already. Thank you, Lucy.
Great.
Maybe I can just add one thing. As Avni said, this is still early, and basically there's this like group of people scattered across the Balkans that have some kind of capacity and that are pushing this process. And also, as Jenan said before, all this regarding ecosystem services so far in the Balkans has been donor driven. So it's been done only within like projects funded by international institutions like GIZ or UNDP or I don't know, WWF. So once again, we still don't have the atmosphere where this is sort of comes from sort of from in the inside, you know. But still, these regional guidelines, that the booklet that has been prepared and that our colleague Nicola will present tomorrow, applies this IES method or approach that Avni was describing, and it ties it specifically for the process of establishing and managing protected areas. So at the moment we are focusing on that, and they have kind of piloted this in some protected areas, or it's in the process of being piloted in protected areas. So basically the expected outcome would be to apply this process, to incorporate it into the establishment or management of protected areas, because this has not been the practice so far. So we are hoping that in a couple of years' time, all protected areas in the region will have the ecosystem services within their management planning, so that they will have screened them, they will have assessed their values, and then sort of adjust their management objectives and activities also in accordance with this. But as I said, this is the process that is only starting, and we are hoping to make an impact there. There are like odd maybe examples here and there of some mainstreaming on as again protected area or maybe municipal level or something like that. But still, all of this is in a sort of in an infancy, more or less, in the Balkans.
Wonderful, thank you. We also have feedback from Jelena Dučić from Ministry of Environmental Protection in Serbia. Within GIZ ORF Biodiversity Project, ESAF sub-project, we have discussed to integrate ESV into studies for proclamation of protected areas to stress their value for protection. Also would be beneficial for protection of city areas. Nikola Stojnić will present this. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Now, before we proceed, some of the questions were already addressed by Lucy in depth, and actually the next step for me is to announce Lucy's recap of the whole day. But before we get to that, does anyone have any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you so much for a really wonderful discussion. It was abundant in resources, in two-way communication, which was our intention from the beginning, to have not only a presentation of materials from our side, but a conversation with you on what your experiences are, what your concerns are, and what are the materials you feel you would need in order to deal with the topics we address over these 3 days in a better way. We have, just like yesterday, we have prepared a 2-minute survey for you that is related to the topics our speakers discussed for today. I would kindly ask you to fill it out. It won't take more than 2 minutes. And you can do that while I am announcing the next speaker. So who was there with us yesterday knows her and heard about her, and who doesn't has probably already seen that one name keeps popping out on in the chat box with a number of useful guidelines, resources, useful links, and advice. And that helpful person is going to be presenting you her summary of the day. So her name is Lucy Emerton, and she is the technical advisor to the ESAF project. She is going to do the same thing today. So provide a summary like she did yesterday. She is an environmental economist specializing in ecosystem valuation and financing, who has 30 years of experience working across more than 70 countries in Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. She is the Director of Economics and Finance at the Environment Management Group, a think tank and consultancy company providing policy and technical advice to governments, non-governmental organizations, and the private sector. Lucy, before you start talking, let me just thank you once again for everything you have done.
Thanks, Angela. I'm not really helpful. I just like talking. And if I can't talk, then I like typing instead. Okay. Jenan and Avni, what fantastic presentations. Lovely. I'm just going to refresh everybody's memory, or at least, and also share with the people who weren't with us yesterday. Yesterday, we really looked at the conceptual and policy basis to ecosystem services. And that kind of led us to wonder at the end of the day, fantastic. Maria and Sanya really gave us a good overview of that, but how do we operationalize it? How do we actually set these principles into practice? And that's exactly what we've heard today. I love the way that Avni put it, theory to practice, advice to action. I think it's that practice and action we've been moving to. So Jenan, remember, started off by talking about ESAV, Ecosystem Service Assessment and valuation. He talked about the many different dimensions and methods. But I think the really important points he made was, one, the use of ESAF to strengthen decision-making, making the business case, highlighting development opportunities, looking at ways of capturing ecosystem service values as incentives and finance, engaging stakeholders. And those were things that came up again and again in your questions. So I think Jenan really hit the nail on the head. These are the things as scientists and planners and advisors that we're struggling with. How do we make the case for ecosystems? How do we look at the thing of finance, incentives? How do we engage stakeholders? And to me, the other thing that really shone out and stayed in my brain from what Jenan said is, if we're looking at ESAV, the technical process and information, of course, is important. But what's really important, and maybe even more important, is the process, the communication, the engagement, how we target these studies, and then how we actually use their results to influence decision making. And that's exactly why Avni came in. That question of how do we actually mainstream ecosystem services into decisions and planning. He talked about the integrating ecosystem services approach, the IES approach. He gave a lovely, clear overview of those 6 iterative steps, and the fact that this is really all to do with assessing ecosystem service dependencies and impacts, looking at the risks and opportunities. What are the opportunities that ecosystem services give for a particular development goal or outcome? What are the risks that that development goal or process, policy process, might hold for ecosystem services? And how will that risk translate into risks socially, economically, and developmentally? And what is really important, what are the practical responses and solutions and tools to actually address and capture these risks and opportunities? And that this IES approach, this 6-step process, is a really good way of using assessment to actually identify real world solutions. And as he said, and as that step is called, preparing better decision making. And that segues neatly into where we're going to go tomorrow, preparing better decision making, using the ESAV tools and mainstreaming tools that Jenan and Avni talked about, operationalizing the policy and ecological frameworks that Maria and Sanya talked about. What guidance and capacity opportunities are available? And I think we have an exciting day in store tomorrow and some really good information. Nicola, Yelena already referred to this. Nicola will be talking about some ESAV guidelines that have been developed hot off the press, literally in the last week or two, for using ESAV to support protected area establishment and management in the Western Balkans. But actually these guidelines could be applied anywhere. They're really widely applicable. Mladen will be coming in to talk about a source book on sustainable biodiversity, protected area and ecosystem service financing and investment opportunities. I think that will be very interesting because I saw that also coming up in the questions today. And Maria, our leader, our fearless leader in this great webinar, will also be talking about some very specific capacity and training opportunities that the University of Donja Gorica and a network of regional partners have been working on and developing. So that's my not so brief summing up. Thank you, Avni and Jenan, for a great day. And back to you, Angela.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Before we conclude today's gathering and today's webinar, would anyone like to ask some questions, share some insights, or give any final remarks? Okay, in that case, let me thank you once again. This has been a really wonderful experience and we are blown away by the amount of feedback we got today. Tomorrow, it's time for us to conclude our story and to conclude our shared journey on this webinar dedicated to a deep dive into the topic of ecosystem services. And as you can see, and as I mentioned in the beginning, we created a funnel, and now it's time for us to come to that most narrow part and discuss the resources Lucy just mentioned to you with the speakers she announced. So it is going to be a wonderful day. We are sure of it. You are going to see from Maria again. You are going to see our partners from Serbia. And we really hope to guide the discussion after the presentation of those resources into the potential of for you to apply them into what you will be doing after the webinar is done. So into your practice, into your workspace. So if there are any questions we haven't answered live or they pop up in the meantime, make sure you email them to us or add them to the survey that I linked in the chat box. Tomorrow we will conclude the webinar. The link is the same that we used for these 2 days. The time is the same, so 10 a.m. Central European time, and the company will be enriched with some new people. So thank you so much for your attention for the past 2 hours. Thank you for the contributions and have a great day. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Have a nice day. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.